You're not lazy. You're not doing anything wrong. But if you're over 60 and spending most of your day sitting, watching TV, scrolling, reading, or resting, your body is quietly paying a price. Studies now say sitting too much may be as dangerous as smoking. Not because of one day, but because of every day. And the truth is, it creeps up on you, in your heart, your joints, even your brain. But there's hope, and small changes can save years of life. If you care about aging with strength, clarity, and energy, hit that subscribe button and tap like. Share in the comments how long you sit each day, and we'll give you a few gentle ways to fight back together. Our bodies were built to move. After 60, sitting for long stretches without getting up can quietly start to wear down nearly every major system. When the body stays still for too long, whether watching TV, reading, or working on a computer, circulation slows, muscles stiffen, and less oxygen reaches the brain. Over time, this creates a chain reaction that affects the heart, joints, blood sugar, and even memory. The issue isn't sitting itself. It's sitting for too long without interruption. Studies show that after just 30 minutes of stillness, muscle activity in the legs drops significantly. This reduces the ability of the body to move blood efficiently back to the heart. Poor circulation increases the risk of blood clots, swelling in the lower legs, and even long-term heart strain. For older adults who may already be managing age-related cardiovascular changes, this matters more than ever. Some cardiologists compare prolonged sitting to a slow and silent stress test on the body, one that plays out day after day. Joints and muscles also suffer when seated too long. Hips tighten, hamstrings shorten, and the lower back can become achy or inflamed. Movement helps keep joints lubricated and muscles flexible, which supports better posture, balance, and comfort. Without it, the risk of falls, stiffness, and reduced mobility goes up. Doctors who work with seniors often recommend frequent movement throughout the day, not just for exercise, but to keep the entire musculoskeletal system functioning smoothly. Perhaps most surprising is the impact on the brain. Reduced movement means less oxygen-rich blood reaches the brain, which can lead to mental fog, slower reaction times, and poor focus. But there's good news. Research now shows that standing up and moving for just 3 to 5 minutes every 30 minutes can reverse many of these effects. A recent study published in the journal Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise found that short, light walking breaks throughout the day improved blood sugar control and cognitive performance in adults over 60. It doesn't take intense workouts. Even a slow walk to the kitchen, stretching near a chair, or light household tasks can help. These simple movement breaks aren't just about comfort, they're about long-term health. Regular short bursts of activity can lower the risk of type 2 diabetes, reduce inflammation, improve circulation, and support a clearer mind. And over time, these small choices may help extend independence and energy well into later years. The key is consistency. Setting a timer, using a step tracker, or even linking movement breaks to daily habits, like standing during commercials or walking while on a phone call, can create lasting routines that protect your body and brain. Staying seated for too long may feel harmless, but the damage adds up quietly. Moving every 30 minutes is one of the simplest, most powerful changes older adults can make, not just to feel better now, but to age stronger, longer, and with more freedom. You don't need to run marathons. Simple, gentle chair-based exercises can offer real protection for your muscles, joints, and heart, especially after age 60. Even small movements done while seated can wake up your circulation, reduce stiffness, and help prevent the muscle loss that often accelerates with age. For seniors dealing with arthritis, limited mobility, or balance concerns, chair exercises are not just a safe alternative. They're a powerful daily habit that supports lasting strength and independence. Seated leg lifts, arm stretches, and slow spinal twists may seem basic, but they help keep major muscle groups active. When muscles are used regularly, they continue to support posture, balance, and metabolism. Without that stimulation, the body starts to lose muscle mass, a condition called sarcopenia, which can make everyday tasks like climbing stairs, standing up from a chair, or carrying groceries feel harder over time. Even 5 to 10 minutes. A day of seated movement can slow this decline and keep muscles more responsive and engaged. Circulation is another key benefit. When you sit still for too long, blood tends to pool in the legs, and oxygen delivery to tissues slows down. Gentle chair movements, like ankle rolls, arm circles, or slow torso twists, encourage better blood flow to the heart and brain. Improved circulation means more oxygen and nutrients reach your organs, supporting energy, alertness, and healing. For those who spend much of the day sitting, these small activities can offer a major boost. Chair exercises are also friendly to aging joints. Because the movements are controlled and low impact, they avoid the pounding that comes with high-intensity activity, making them ideal for people with arthritis or chronic pain. Doctors often recommend chair-based routines for patients who are recovering from surgery, managing pain, or just starting to build a habit of movement. They can reduce joint stiffness, improve range of motion, and support better flexibility, all without risk of falling. Beyond movement itself, the benefits of regular chair exercise reach deeper. Studies show that daily gentle activity helps regulate blood sugar levels, reduce blood pressure, and improve cholesterol, 3 major risk factors for heart disease and type 2 diabetes. When these systems are supported, the whole body functions more efficiently and ages more gracefully. No special equipment is needed, and routines can be adjusted to fit any comfort level. Whether it's stretching during a TV show or doing light leg lifts while reading, the goal is to stay gently active every day. Chair-based exercises may look small, but their impact is lasting. They offer a safe, effective way to stay strong, maintain independence, and protect the heart, all without ever leaving your seat. Binge watching may seem harmless, especially after a long day or during quiet evenings, but sitting for hours without standing takes a silent toll on the body, particularly after age 60. What feels like a relaxing routine can, over time, increase the risk of blood clots, joint stiffness, and even cognitive decline. The longer the body remains motionless, the more these risks quietly build. Extended periods of sitting reduce blood flow, especially to the legs. This can lead to circulation problems, including deep vein thrombosis, DVT, a type of blood clot that forms in the veins, often in the legs. While DVT can affect anyone, older adults are more susceptible due to slower circulation and decreased mobility. Without movement to keep blood flowing, the risk of clot formation increases, particularly during prolonged sitting, like watching several episodes of a show in one sitting. Joints and muscles also suffer when kept in the same position for too long. Hips, knees, and shoulders can stiffen, and back pain may worsen. Regular movement is essential to keeping the joints lubricated and muscles flexible. For those already managing arthritis or joint discomfort, sitting without breaks can lead to increased stiffness and a greater sense of fatigue when finally standing up. Perhaps even more concerning is the effect on the brain. Research shows that long periods of sedentary behavior are linked to changes in brain function, including memory loss and reduced cognitive sharpness. When the body is still, blood flow to the brain also slows, which can impact focus, mental clarity, and long-term brain health. For adults hoping to stay mentally sharp, reducing prolonged sedentary time is just as important as staying mentally active. The good news is that small changes can make a big difference. Setting a timer to stand up every 30 minutes, walking around during episode transitions, or stretching during commercial breaks are all simple ways to interrupt long periods of stillness. Even light movement, such as reaching overhead, marching in place, or walking to refill a glass of water, reactivates the muscles and stimulates circulation. These small habits help keep joints mobile, energy levels steadier, and the brain better supplied with oxygen. It's not about avoiding TV altogether. It's about breaking up the stillness. By building in just a few moments of motion, the body stays engaged, the blood keeps flowing, and the brain stays sharper. As the years go on, those simple breaks can be the difference between slowing down and staying strong. Standing while folding, laundry, talking on the phone, or preparing meals may not feel like much, but those small moments of upright movement can have a big impact, especially after 60. The body was made to move, and simply standing more throughout the day supports better circulation, strengthens bones, and helps maintain good posture. It's not formal exercise, and it doesn't require extra time. It's about making everyday tasks work in your favor. When you stand, your body engages more muscles than it does when sitting. The legs support your weight, your core activates to keep you balanced, and your spine lengthens to maintain posture. These small but constant adjustments throughout the day help reduce stiffness, build strength, and train the body to stay aligned. Over time, this can lead to less back pain, better balance, and improved confidence in movement, all key to maintaining independence as you age. Circulation also improves when you're on your feet. Standing encourages blood to move more efficiently through the body, delivering oxygen and nutrients to the muscles and organs. It helps reduce the risk of swelling in the legs, varicose veins, and even blood clots that can result from prolonged sitting. For older adults with heart or vascular concerns, breaking up long sitting sessions with standing tasks is a simple but powerful way to protect health. Bone strength is another important benefit. As people age, bones naturally become less dense, increasing the risk of fractures and osteoporosis. Weight-bearing activities, including standing, help stimulate bone cells and maintain density. It's not about lifting weights. Just spending more time upright signals the body to preserve bone strength. Cooking at the counter, organizing shelves, or simply standing while reading the mail are small actions that contribute to long-term skeletal health. Perhaps most striking is the research showing how replacing even 1 hour of sitting per day with light standing or movement can lower the risk of early death by up to 30%. That's not due to intense exercise. It's from choosing to be gently active rather than completely still. Doctors often emphasize that the human body responds well to frequent, low-intensity activity throughout the day. It's not about workouts. It's about movement. The key is building standing into your normal routine. Stand while you talk on the phone. Put on music while doing dishes. Move mail sorting or simple hobbies to a countertop. These choices may seem small, but they add up to a stronger body, healthier bones, and better circulation. As the years pass, it's often not big workouts that keep people healthy. It's the little moments of motion built into everyday life. Choosing to stand more is one of the simplest, smartest ways to age well without changing your day. Create a small tradition after each meal. A gentle walk down the hallway, a few light stretches on the porch, or a quiet moment of Tai Chi. This simple 10-minute movement ritual can have a powerful effect on how the body feels and functions after eating, especially for people over 60. It's not exercise in the traditional sense. It's a steady, soothing rhythm that supports digestion, stabilizes blood sugar, and gently resets your posture. After a meal, the body enters the process of digestion. Blood flow shifts toward the stomach and intestines, and movement can help guide that process more smoothly. Light walking or stretching encourages better circulation and keeps the digestive system active, reducing the chances of bloating, gas, or indigestion. Gastroenterologists often recommend post-meal movement for older adults, since digestion tends to slow with age. Even something as small as walking to the mailbox or pacing the living room can aid in this natural rhythm. But the benefits go beyond digestion. Blood sugar often spikes after meals, especially if the meal included carbohydrates or sweets. For people over 60, whose insulin response may be less efficient, this spike can be more dramatic and more dangerous over time. Studies have shown that even a short walk after eating can significantly reduce post-meal blood sugar levels. In one study, just 10 minutes of walking helped older adults regulate glucose more effectively than remaining seated. This simple habit may reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes or help manage it more smoothly in those already diagnosed. A movement ritual after meals also helps with posture. Sitting during and after eating can compress the stomach and slouch the spine. Light stretching or upright movement restores alignment and relieves tension in the back, neck, and shoulders. Over time, this can improve balance and reduce aches that often settle in during long-seated periods. Just as important is the calming, grounding effect of a repeated daily habit. Creating a ritual, whether it's Tai Chi in the backyard or a slow walk to water the plants, builds rhythm into the day. This routine provides structure, supports mindfulness, and adds gentle physical activity without effort or strain. Many physical therapists and aging specialists encourage post-meal movement not just for physical health, but for emotional well-being. It's never about how far or how fast. It's about doing something small, consistently. A 10-minute ritual. After each meal becomes 30 minutes of movement a day, without the pressure of a workout. And over time, this habit supports digestion, protects blood sugar, strengthens posture, and brings calm. It's a quiet but powerful way to care for the body as it ages, one meal at a time.